Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the Real Collective Podcast. I am your host, Sean Tasse, joined by my illustrious co-host, Kyle Miller. What's up, K-Dog?
Oh, man, as we said, living the dream, as usual.
I don't know if I've ever called you K-Dog. I don't know if anybody's ever called you K-Dog, but I feel like I got a flat brand. So I gotta lean in heavy.
Yeah, you can't turn back now.
That's it. All right.
Lean into that skid.
Appreciate it. As always, guys, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you can keep up to date. We just launched a bunch of different real estate video content for properties that have not yet hit the market. So if you want to keep up to date with stuff before it hits, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who you think might like what we're talking about today. We are going to start talking a little bit about some environmental assessments, what that means. I had a client just recently go through a phase 1 assessment, and one of my partners, Elliot, is going through, I think, a phase 2 environmental assessment right now. And Kyle, you've got a place that you think of often. Yeah. that was beside a gas station.
There's literally a place. There's literally a place here in the. I won't pick it out because there's no point. But here in the Ottawa area, and it's at a very big corner, and it's like, I don't know, a couple 100 feet from a gas station. And like, I grew up in that area, seeing this place all the time, and it didn't bother me then. Didn't think about it. It's just a house. Sure. Went to high school with the person that lived there, and then now every time I drive by, I'm like, oh man. Like, that's going to be so hard to sell someday. just because it's so close to a gas station. And it's like when we do get certain appraisals done and look at certain properties, there's literally a question by some of the there'll be certain things that tip off a lender, and they'll be like, what's the closest gas station? And if it's within like X 100 feet or 100 meters, they're like, no, or you have to get an environmental assessment and like a soil sample to make sure that there's been no leaching or anything like that. It's really wild to see, and it's those little things where people are like, that house is great or that's a great deal, and it's like, you need to go deeper into the financing part to understand that the number might be good, but you're gonna own that house forever. Forever. Yeah. You're never getting out of that place.
Yeah, you can't even give it away.
No.
So just so that people can understand, when they do environmental assessments, from what I understand, again, not an expert, but have some recent experience with it. So when they do a phase 1 environmental assessment, they walk around. They pull data. They say, hey, what can we see here? Do we see buried oil tanks on a residential property? Do we see a commercial property that has, that does automotive, for example, and there's oil that's, not draining properly? Are they doing rust proofing, and the rust proofing spray is winding up everywhere? Anything that's potentially, a problem, they raise when they do a phase 1 environmental assessment. And then they go back into the history and they pull up, was there ever a gas, not just is there a gas station here now, was there ever a gas station? And in Ottawa, we have a little place called LeBreton Flats that was I think it was a garbage dump for a long time.
I hear talk about all the soil and stuff at LeBreton and what's going on there. I'm going to plead ignorant. I have no idea what the problem is. I just know people get real fired up about it, but I have no idea what the problem is. And it's like that's probably one of the biggest slowdowns into getting our lowly sends back into downtown. But I could honestly say I have no clue. And I figure there's enough money out there to clean it up, but maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Hey man, November's over, so I think they can start winning again.
Oh, good. Good for them. Start that tomorrow.
Right.
Tomorrow, yeah. December 1st.
Check. So phase, I think what it was for LeBreton Flats is it was originally the garbage dump, and then all the garbage leached. They pulled all the garbage out. They had to lift up all the houses, and they moved all those houses 100 years ago or whatever it was to Mechanicsville. So all the houses that you see in Mechanicsville that are all like old little janky places that don't actually have basements, those are houses that they lifted up from LeBreton and dropped them down in Mechanicsville.
So that's a cool story. I didn't know that. That's a cool story. Okay. Neat.
Yeah. So
all right.
So there you go, a little history. I on Facebook, there's this group called Lost Ottawa. And they have like all these old pictures and old stories about how Ottawa was like, hundreds of years ago. It's super interesting. When you start to nerd out about your city, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the phase one, they'll go through and they'll look back, 50 up to 50 years to see, was there ever like, what do you call it, a gas station within that proximity, whatever it is, whatever the distance is that they need to have, was there ever that sort of thing to consider? And then if the phase one turns up, oh, hey, looks like we need to figure some stuff out here, then they'll order a phase two. If phase one's like, hey, no, we're good, man, you're set, this is nothing to worry about, all good, perfect, all set, nothing to worry about. But phase two requires, among other things, digging down, doing core samples. So they have to dig down all the way to the water table and figure out what's in the soil all the way through and what's in the water below the soil. So that's a big time expense. It costs a lot to do that, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort. And then if they come back and they say, okay, cool, the soil is not contaminated, you're good, then you'll be able to go on to your next phase. And a lot of times people are doing this because they want to build, not just buy, right, the regular house on the corner that you're talking about, but they want to build. And that's been, I think, there's something like a 50-year holdover or hold off period until you can do anything if the ground is determined to be contaminated. Even right beside our office here. So between we've got this office on the corner of Bronson, right beside the Queensway, and right between our office and there's a McDonald's on Bronson as well. There's a gap in the street, and there's nothing there because it used to be a gas station. It's just a fenced off open lot, and it used to be a gas station. Nobody can do anything there. They have to wait for that time to pass.
There's one right across the road too.
Right across the road from where?
That same spot. Like you're gonna like that same spot.
Oh, another gas station. You mean? Yeah, for sure. Well, there's another one that we bought, that we almost bought. And again, you got to buy these things with cash, right? We almost bought a house that was in old Ottawa South, and it was right behind like a tire change place that used to be a gas station. And it had a phase one flag raised. Nobody wanted to spend the money and do a phase two. So it was like, hey, if you want to buy this house, you've got to pay cash. The end.
So, yeah, and that's you see this a lot more in the commercial space for sure, right? That's because of, well, just because you do. But I have had a couple scenarios on the residential spot where they still do the same thing. Now, this is lender dependent, right? So different lenders look at different things, especially when you get from, the farther away you get from the major banks in the A space into the private space. Those private lenders look at things differently. Like they're less worried about you and a little bit more worried about the property, because the overarching thought is that you're going to fail, right? Like the banks plan on you failing, right? I hate to say it, but it's true. The vast majority of people don't. But in the event that you do fail, meaning you default on the mortgage, it's the bank's problem. It's the lender's problem. So they want to know that they can flip that thing in 30, 60, 90 days, get their money out and be done with it, right? Yeah. So when you get into that of like, we're less worried about the individual, but more worried about the property, appraisals happen 100% of the time, like 100% of the time. And one time on this certain property, the appraiser basically made a note about how old the septic was, and there wasn't enough documentation to know that it was good. And I mean, septics are interesting because they could be 50 years old working perfectly, but it'll fail a test because it's not up to today's standards, but it still works, right? So there's a game to play there. And clients had to have the septic inspected and come and drill 3 holes and make sure it wasn't leaching, and then a bunch of other stuff. And it was a pain in the ass for nothing. Yeah. But that's where it can happen for sure in the residential space. Yeah.
Whenever you get city buyers who are looking for a country property and they've got a city agent with them, and they go and look at the septic and they're like, oh, it's not that great. And then they get like the septic inspector who's like cross the T's, dot the I's kind of guy, that deal's going to fall apart. I've seen it so many times because I've never been a septic person, right? I don't know much about it until you get the good old boys from down the way who come to do the septic inspection, and they're like, yeah, it's fine. You'll be all right as long as you don't mess with it, right?
Well, it's unfortunate, but it is true. Like it's one of those touchy things where it's exactly that. It could go the next day. It could also last another 20 years.
Yeah,
And if you have someone get in there and do the, do all the inspection, right? They're not gonna pass. It's today's standards are so different,
wow,
right? Doesn't mean it doesn't work.
that's right. And they also run the risk of messing around with it too much, and then it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So
And it's so not cheap to fix that the deal falls apart because it's like who's going to spend the 25 or $30,000
yeah,
to do this,
yeah,
right? And that becomes the argument. So that's yeah, if you're not used to it or understand them, it's you want to be working with the right people to figure out how this is going to affect you one way or the other.
that's true. I never really think of septics for environmental. I always think of like buried oil tanks or like leaching gas or whatever through the ground. Yeah, when you get into do that phase two, it's funny because not funny, interesting. In the phase one, they pick here's the different areas where we need to drill. We need to drill in this area because we believe there's that. We need to drill in this area because we believe there's that. We need to drill in this area because we believe there's that. So it's a lot of like geological science that goes into how they do all of this, right? It's neat to see. I've got a seller who's just completed a phase one environmental, and it is a 215-page report talking about everything that was found in that phase one environmental, and it's like, who's gonna read a 215-page report? Like, give me the
You want the highlight? Where's the cold notes?
yeah. And both the client and I joked about that because we both saw the report. Like, what do we do with this? Like, as your agent, I feel as though I need to read through this whole thing and pull out all that information. So it's definitely a daunting task, but one that has to happen.
But I think the key there too, though, and this is one of these conversations where it's like it starts one place, but the nugget to pull out of all this is it's super. Both sides need to understand this stuff, and I don't mean like you have to be able to read it and pull out, the like you hire an expert to do that
Sure.
assessment and to look at it and all that, but you need to understand how that could affect your deal so you aren't the one who's blowing it up for something stupid. For example, timing, right? Like
Yeah.
you're talking about something here that takes time and money.
Yeah.
And if you're the seller, you need to understand that if that happens to your deal, you're not flexing by saying you got 5 days to give me your conditions. Like, hey, bud, this is this is gonna be weeks. If you
Yeah.
want to, and the thing is now that it's happened one time, guess what's gonna happen the next time when you crash this deal and put it back on the market? Guess what? It's happening again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you might as well just deal with it because here we go.
Yeah.
So when people don't understand, like I find that too, that when you don't understand how this process is gonna roll out, or I should say aren't flexible to how this is going to roll out, you're gonna be your own worst enemy. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot. I've had people come to my office and been like, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to buy this place. It's like a 10 unit building, and they want a 30-day close." I'm like, "In what world?" They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, it's a 10 unit place. They're like, yeah, it's 10 apartments. Okay, I'm like that. Well, first of all, that's commercial. They're like, okay, do you know a commercial broker? I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, what about your phase one and then the appraisal and then this? They're like, why would we have to do that? I'm like, because it's commercial. Like, I'll let you talk to my buddy Brent because he's the commercial guy I deal with. But just so you know, 30 days, unless you have $1.2 million under your mattress that no one's going to ask about, um, this is not a 30-day deal, bud. They're
Yeah.
like, oh man, and this is coming, and the seller's the one who's pushing that out there. I'm like, yeah, you got to know how this stuff is going to work. Like, you
Yeah.
have to know how this is going to work and what's the right expectation. you
Right.
know?
And what's what's reasonable, like
That
30,
was the word. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
30 days is not reasonable. It's not gonna nobody's gonna be able to put it together, right?
No,
So like you said, you're just gonna be upset. Same as like a lot of the times on the listing side, we'll get an offer from someone and they're like, hey, we need 2 weeks to do the financing. It's like, no, you don't. You really just need 5 days if you have the right agent. But I can't control what that buyer client is doing, right?
well, well, maybe
Well,
I'll argue that a little
okay, do it. Yeah, go. Hit me.
because one is that it's 2 weeks is not 2 weeks, right? And there's a very distinct thing we have to worry about, which are called weekends, right?
Never heard of
So weekends don't count in the financing world,
it. Right.
right? So it's not 14 days, it's 10 right away. And depending on the market, okay, depending on the market and depending on it, how things happen, I've got some good relationships personally that I can usually call in a few favors. But when every deal becomes a favor, those get worn out pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, for example, for I would say the two biggest things are going to be down payment and appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have money coming from different places, and if we don't know or have the right documentation for that, it's going to take us longer to do, right? Some of those appraisers don't drop whatever they're doing to go and have and get it done quickly, right? It's not like you can just get an appraiser in a day, right? It's going to take 2 or 3 days, and if it takes them 2 or 3 days to gather it up, information, get to the property, and takes them another couple days to finish the report because maybe it's a unique property, right? Again, this is property dependent. So if you've got a townhouse in Barrhaven and you and the next 9,987 people have the same house, no offense, Barrhaven, then yeah, that's going to be a much quicker appraisal. If you're looking at the house out in Carp somewhere that's just one-off build and it's totally unique, that 100% is going to take a longer time,
Sure.
100%, and
Sure.
more inspections, and then longer appraisal and all that. So I think that's property dependent. I don't disagree, but I also disagree. It depends on the property as to how long you want to do that. And again, when we take the mentality of, well, last time I sold my house in Barrhaven, I sold my house in Barrhaven, and it only took 3 days. When was it? Was it 20? And there was no conditions. Was this 2019? Was this 2021? Because that's not cool. Like, that's different timing. And now you're selling a completely different property in a completely different place, which is going to be evaluated completely different. So that is the thing to make sure we understand.
All right. I listen. I hear you and I agree with you and I appreciate you stopping me. It's not a one size fits all. Let's get into more disagreements in the second half. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might be interested in listening to Kyle and I disagree. And you can
respectfully disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, I'm all for it. Makes for better content for the people. You can book an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly links below. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you so much for your ears. We will catch you on the flip side.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to better serve a wide array of clients, including first-time buyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allows us to put our clients at the center of everything we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you are interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the second half of the Real Collective podcast. Kyle and I are going to continue to argue. Maybe you'll have to watch to find out. Anything Kyle says, I'm just going to do the opposite of what they taught in improv and just say no.
No. Yeah, perfect. So, okay, so we're into this. We're December 1st tomorrow. We're into the winter season, which is a tougher spot. So, but I saw you guys have put out a good number of listings this week, which I find interesting at this time of year that they're there and stuff. But what, like, strategy wise, how does that play out at this time of year? Like, is it different? Is it harder? Because, I mean, I feel like it would be, but what's the strategy on that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with whenever people have to sell, they have to sell, right? So you can't take that away. Hey, I've got a flip that I'm doing and it's done. Okay, good. Go to market. Like, let's not waste any time. Positioning is super important right now in terms of your listing game. So if you're listing a property, like there's one that we've got a conditional sale on right now. The two other properties on the street that it went up against, one was listed at 480, one was listed at 490. We went on at 450 and we were sold conditionally within 4 days. So we had the status certificate ordered, we had everything for everybody to do, we had a busy open house, we were the best deal going, and it was the first one sold. And even when we looked at, the comparable recent sales, not the comparable properties that are active for sale right now, but when we looked at the comparable recent sales, we knew that, hey, 450 is about fair market value. It also had the combined experience, the combined factor of being a better deal than those other two properties that were available for sale. And of course, the clients got it ready, made it look nice, all that sort of stuff. So that when people came in, it showed exceptionally well, right? That's all part of the strategy, part of the plan.
Were the other, you say it again, were the other two higher?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
So yeah. Okay.
So by offering the best deal in the prospective buyer's opinion, that's how you can still sell. Here's the thing. As we hit the winter time, you're going to have less competition. If you're a seller, there's less people that you're up against. In the springtime, you get lost in a sea of other listings, right? But in the winter time, as we approach the winter, again, a lot of it has to do with, hey, if you've got to sell, you've got to sell, and the time is when the time is. If it's now, it's now, right? We've got another client who, just finished a flip on the property. Okay, well, it's vacant, it's clean, it's ready to go, it's ready to show. What's your major piece that you're competing against? Well, the next closest listing is listed for $499. Well, we're listed at $450. Okay, but again, when we did the comparables, and we looked at actually what's sold as opposed to what's active, $450 is pretty close to fair market value. So it's like, if you price at fair market value, and I think a lot of people get stuck on, well, what else is out there for sale? And especially if you don't have an agent working for you that's digging into days on market, average sale price, all that sort of thing, you might not be able to, sell because you'll be sitting there on the market. I had an email yesterday from a seller who is a signed client of another agent. And so that's starting to happen now too, where people are saying, hey, I'm not getting what I need out of my agent. Can you please help me? I said, well, if you have an agency agreement, I cannot help you. When that agency agreement is complete, we can have a conversation, but until then I can't. If and when that expires, hopefully it doesn't, hopefully you sell, but if and when it does expire, I'm happy to have a conversation. So that's what's happening right now. And I think a lot of people, I had another meeting yesterday with a guy who had his place listed too high, got bad advice, and got stuck holding his property. And he doesn't want to hold it. He wants to sell it, but nobody told him, hey, here's what you need to price it at to sell it. Like they're kind of tough conversations to have right now because everybody's stuck in 2021 pricing, right? And the reality is, it is what it is. Another person reached out. He said, hey, I got an appraisal from last year. My house appraised at $800,000. Do you think I can sell for $800,000 today? I said, you're not going to like the answer, right? He's like, well, what do you think? I'm like, here's the comparable sales. Well, that one was right next door to me and it sold for $725 and it had a finished basement. So you're 700. Like, oh shit, really? Yeah, man. So if you're selling and it's this time of year, you have to be the best deal going, and just base it on the facts. Don't base it on what you think you might want to get. Base it on the reality of the situation and you'll be okay, right? Buyers are still out there.
I would tell, like, I cannot get away from the fact that the data is just the data. Like, it is what it is.
Right.
And
Right.
if you're questioning anything, or even if you want to just, like, and it's no offense to agents, but I would say, an agent comes in and says, I think we can get this much money. There's a part of me that still says, dude, just pay for an appraisal. Just get an appraisal done. If you're really questioning it, right? Like, before you have people come in and try to pitch you on how they're going to help you sell and all that stuff, which is, I still, like, do it. That's fine. But give yourself some knowledge. Give yourself some knowledge of what it's going to look, of what it's going to be. Have that appraisal done. Like, again, if it's just such, it's so valuable. It's, in my opinion, it's just so valuable. And you can turn that around. You can turn that around and use it. Like, someone comes in and wants to snake you for 30-40 grand less, and you're like, but, like, it should be worth this. Now, I mean, if it doesn't sell, and eventually you got to do something, but at least there's a starting point there. Because, yeah, getting stuck holding the bag is tough. I'm working on one right now. I just, client, unfortunately, I think we had an appraisal in July at one price, and they got it ready, and they bought first, and they listed it. Like, the whole thing the price started with a 4. You didn't see that very often. And we're still now at the point where we're a week and a half to close, and we're now gone into protection mode because they haven't sold their house.
Yeah.
And we needed to sell. So now we're doing something quite creative to get this to close to on time if we can. But that's tough when you're stuck holding the bag like that. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so the strategy that we're doing in those cases where we're going and we're buying a property and we're saying, okay, well, we haven't sold your property yet, and so we need your property to sell for this purchase to work. And we're still doing that. We've done that a number of times, especially this year. I'm in the middle of one right now. Sometimes you can get away with a first refusal. And we've got one right now on a first refusal, which is good. It gives the clients peace of mind. They were buying an $800,000 house and selling a $450,000 house. So it's a lot easier to sell a $450,000 house than it is to sell an $800,000 house. So, the sellers of the $800,000 house said, okay, you know what, we'll leverage the sale of our house based on the sale of yours, and we've got theirs conditionally sold now. So that's promising, right? But what you said earlier is, if you really want to time the market and strategize, like, how do you do this, the best time to buy is like right now, and like the first week of January, when everybody's hibernating, when everybody's in Christmas mode, when everybody's like go go go. In December, that's the time to buy, and buy time. Close in 5 months. Right? Push your closing out as far as you can, kick the can, and be ultra conservative with the value of your home. So if you're like, hey, look, the comparables right now show that my house should sell for, I don't know, call it $600,000. Run your whole math on $550, right? That your selling price for your house is $550. That way you're going to be pretty safe when you're moving forward, because, hey, look, if we get down to it, maybe we can sell your house for $600, and that'd be great if the market picks up. But if you're running all your math on $550 and it gets down to crunch time, like you're talking about, or starts to feel like sketchy or worrisome or whatever, then you list it for $550. And with the new rules that are coming into place tomorrow, you can create a multiple offer situation, and you can tell the other people, hey, I was listed at $550. We think it's worth $600, but we're willing to sell. We've got an offer for $560. Oh shit, you've got $560, and yeah, you're right. We do think it's worth $600. Here's $575. Oh, okay, great. Hey, we got an offer for $575. Oh yeah, $575. I'll give you $580 for it. Right? And you can have that conversation as of tomorrow if your seller gives you the right to do that. Are we going to see multiple offers that are driving the price, 30 grand, maybe 100 or 200? No.
No.
But the best real estate deal that I've ever done on a flip property, I bought it in the fall. I closed on it in the spring, and I bought it for $5.25. I closed on it, and no, sorry, I bought it for $450. And I closed on it in the spring, and when I closed on it, the appraised value, it was $5.25. I made $75,000 before I even closed on the house. And then I went in, I spent like a little bit of lipstick on it, right? Like maybe 20 or 30 grand, turned around and sold it for 585, right? Because it didn't look as nice until I went and cleaned it up. And so that was, I mean, 585 sell price, 450 purchase price, $20,000 of money spending, you know, and that was it. That was a flip that I in and out of it real fast. And but it was a long closing, and I made money during that closing. Now, this was going from whatever it was 2020 until 2021, so I was pretty lucky. But you know, by the time the work was done on it, like I closed, I think it was in April, and then we were back on the market in like May. Like it was a really quick turnaround. We still sold it in the spring market. Yeah, so
I think
that's the key.
The big thing that people want to do when you've got that whole I'm gonna buy first and sell 100%. If you can push the closing out long, do it. Because the other thing too, I think part of that negotiation is, hey, I want to put a long closing because this is what I got to do. But we can, if things happen the right way, we'll move it up, right?
Yeah.
If everybody agrees, then you're cool. So that's one of those little negotiation pieces. And the other thing too is make sure, the biggest thing is to make sure to have this plan. Right? Yeah. Like what if, how you have to have that hard conversation of what if it doesn't sell, right? Yeah. We had that conversation in whatever, September or October when this house got listed. Like what if it doesn't sell? So we knew this was a possibility, right? Didn't think it was going to happen, but we knew it was possible. So now we're here, and that's it. It is what it is, and we're gonna work with this. But that's the biggest thing is making sure you work with someone who can do that. And yes, I'll plug brokers all day long, but you want to have that conversation with your bank. Like, because I'll be honest, I don't know if they could do this. I don't know if the banks could do this deal. So they couldn't. I'm quite honestly sure they couldn't do this deal, or they would flip it to a broker anyway, right? That they have a relationship with, because banks do that, by the way, some of them. So it's like, this is where having someone who's got different streams of of lending can be super beneficial, because any good broker is gonna see that and say, yeah, but this is what happens. And you could have one of the answers could be, look, guys, this is all or nothing. Yeah. Like if this doesn't work, just letting you know, it's not working. It's you roll the dice, but this is the deal, right? It's a shitty conversation, but it has to be had, because that's what can happen. And here we are. So.
I had a conversation with a client maybe a month ago, right before we sold this place. And he's like, okay, so what do we do? I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal, man. You're fucked. I'm sorry to tell you. But he's like, thanks for telling me. I appreciate the honesty. Yeah, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. What do we do? Now what? Okay, get over that. Now what, right? Good long-term relationship with a client. So, you know, and then when we got there, I was like, okay, well, let's do everything we can, make this happen, because this is what it's got to be. Anyways, lots more to talk about. We'll do that more in the next episode. We're big time over time here because we like to talk, in case you haven't noticed. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who you think might be interested in this conversation. Schedule an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly links below. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much. If you're listening on Spotify, also thanks. Go fuck yourself. I'm just kidding. If you're still listening, thank you for your ears. And until next time, keep it real.
Collective.